Yes.
The least Green Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1376 of the War News stream. And also, it is the Sunday night fundraiser stream yet again, another night to raise funds for those in Ukraine. And also, we have a very big breaking news. Ukraine has launched a global war on the Russian Shadow Fleet as of today. We've also seen that Russia is evacuating citizens from Venezuela as we speak. And also, Iran is preparing to suppress major imminent riots in their country. And there is a lot of big news today, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, folks, we are going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world. And today is once again an incredibly significant day on none other than a Sunday night fundraiser for Nobody Ukraine, an amazing nonprofit that has been helping out around the world. Significant news has been evolving, or more so developing, around the open seas of the world, as the state of Ukraine, at least from what we understand today, is now declaring an open war against the entirety of any vessels involved in what is called the Russian Shadow Fleet that is containing and carrying goods, cargo, and specifically that of crude oil for the Russian Federation to violate sanctions. 5,500 kilometers away from the state of Ukraine today, a vessel carrying what is believed to be Russian oil has been hit and appears to be sinking off the coast of Senegal, which is the longest range strike that we have ever seen if it was conducted by some form of a drone in the history of modern warfare. Additionally, we have also been able to hear of other major breaking news coming out of the Islamic Republic of Iran, as the Islamic Republic of Iran is now dealing with an active rebellion, and the Iranian government is now raising up what is basically a militia force within the country to try and put down the rebels and keep the internal government secure. It is clearly showing us that the internal situation is still falling apart, slowly yet surely, within the Islamic Republic of Iran. But while the Islamic Republic of Iran is dealing with all that odd anomaly and phenomena within their own border, directly across the Gulf of Oman from Iran, in Muscat, Oman, Alexander Lukashenko has just gone missing. It's been 3 days now since he arrived in Muscat in Oman, and there has been absolutely no public statements by the government of Oman or the Belarusian government as to where in the world Lukashenko has gone and what he's doing. So at the moment, from what we understand, Lukashenko is actually missing at the moment from the global stage, and we have no clue where in the world the guy even is at the moment. The last time he was seen, he was in Oman, but since then, no words come out. Meanwhile, inside of the state of Israel, the Israelis are continuing their actions against Hezbollah and Hamas as an airstrike was conducted today near the city of Rafah within the Gaza Strip, where an Israeli F-15I engaged and destroyed several Hamas combatants on the ground with a laser-guided bomb. Additionally, we have also been able to hear of major news and developments within the People's Republic of China, as we are now hearing that Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party are going to be tightening censorship on the public and stopping them from saying not so nice things about the Chinese government or generally their takes on what should be done around the world in terms of foreign policy or even inside of the country and internal domestic developments. Still, the Russian Federation doesn't really appear to be that much better off, and they might want to try and start implementing that form of censorship, as Russia has now, by presidential decree, authorized their military spending budget for the 2026 fiscal year, which is going to be a whopping $166 billion at minimum. This is the largest military spending that the Russian Federation since 1991 has ever conducted within a single year. As a matter of fact, this is 3 times larger in amount than the largest amount that Russia was spending on their military annually before the war in Ukraine began. Russia has also seen that they've come under another Ukrainian drone attack again tonight, and also some archival footage has started to emerge out of the ether, if we want to call it that, on the attack from November 14th at Novorossiysk, and also the attacks on the Russian shadow tankers of Kairos and Virat near to the area of the coast of Turkey. Additionally, we've also seen that NATO is now conducting military exercises within Romania today in a hypothetical scenario where the U.S. is not involved, with the higher command being led by the United Kingdom, France, and Germany within the military exercise. Meanwhile, in Belgium, additional news emerged that they are now doing cost analysis on whether or not, if the United States completely pulls support for Ukraine, how much would it cost for them to build up the armed forces of Europe to a subsequent size that would be a deterrent alone against Russia if they end up succeeding in Ukraine due to the United States forcing an end to the war, versus how much it would cost for them to support Ukraine and see the war to an inevitable victory against the Russians. Crazily enough, it actually costs less to keep the war going than it would to try and stop it right now. The Russian government is also in a bit of its own quagmire additionally as well, as Witkoff will be arriving to Moscow, and we highly expect that Witkoff is going to have the peace proposal and himself shot down in the usual circular kind of talk that the Russians do every single time a possible peace deal comes around. This is also off the heels of the meeting that the Ukrainian delegation and the United States had today within Miami, Florida, which did conclude with the United States, or at least the Secretary of State, saying that there was some sort of a beneficial outcome, although once again the exact details have not been made clear to the public at the moment. Inside of Washington, D.C., a large amount of additional news came out today, with the President of the United States even distancing himself from the double tap that was conducted against the narco boat down within the area of the Eastern Caribbean. We've also heard multiple other statements from the the U.S. government as well about multiple global situations, including the fact that Nicolas Maduro actually did get on a phone call with the President of the United States last night. The President has now clarified that when he said that they were shutting down their airspace and they were going to be bombing Venezuela soon, that didn't mean that they were shutting down the airspace and bombing Venezuela anytime soon. It was just said for funsies. Nevertheless, the Venezuelan government is pulling out their greatest defender, Maduro's brother, who has stated that he will pull Taekwondo on the Marines if they land on shore. Meanwhile, a no-jam has been issued within southern Venezuela for military aviation purposes as well. Additionally, we have also seen that the Ukrainian armed forces have held their front lines today and have inflicted significant casualties on the Russian Federation. And that's just all the big stories of the day, by the way. That's not all the little ones. So it took me that long just to get through all of the major headliners that we have for tonight for the show. And I think you can tell that we're in for a treat. Also, by the way, if you thought I was kidding about Nicolas Maduro's brother pulling Taekwondo on the Marines, I'm not kidding. That's literally something he did and said on film today. So we are
honestly, it might be their best weapon, honestly, at this point. Based on the old nasty weapons that Venezuela has, that guy might be their best chance of survival at this point.
Man, I mean, I mean, maybe he's like John Wick or something. I don't know. We'll get to it later. We'll let y'all decide if we can show the video on air. If we can find a video that is showable on air of that, we'll try and show it. But with that, folks, it is time for us to get on into all of those big stories of the day. And once again, folks, the fundraiser is open for Nova Ukraine, which has a $2.5 thousand goal, and we've already hit $840 raised nearly. Actually, I think it's $850 now. I'm not exactly sure, but still, an absolutely incredible fundraiser to support as it continues to help out the Ukrainian people who are currently facing a major war, the largest one seen in Europe since the Second World War. So with that, folks, it is time for us to get on into the largest story of the night, which is something that honestly is really hard to even start wrapping our minds around or to even start explaining. Off of the coast of Senegal today, which is a smaller country on the west coast of Africa, generally known for tourism and other sorts of activities, there was an action that occurred today off of their coast within international waters that is absolutely shocking. A vessel called I believe it's the Mersin, that is an alleged Russian shadow tanker, was taking on water and sinking in international waters near to the coast of Senegal. Now, this vessel has been stated by many countries to be involved in the Russian Shadow Fleet, which the Shadow Fleet is a myriad of oil tankers that fly the flags of different nations, like, for example, Liberia, Panama, Senegal, so on and so forth. Any Central American or Central African country usually are the flags that these ships fly under. But these ships transport Russian oil around the world and skirt around the sanctions, allowing for the Russian Federation to make money. Allegedly, according to a lot of the claims made by a great deal of European countries and others, the Mersin appears to be one of those vessels that is involved in shadow tanker operations, at least according to their claims at the moment. This ship is sinking at the moment off the coast of Senegal and appears to be taking on water at the stern and is slowly sinking below the waves, or at least the calm sea state that existed within that area. Additional video did emerge showing the ship with a visible list to stern, once again showing that it has taken on a large amount of water and is sinking.
Senegal lii mooy problème dañuy gis nit nekk ci danger ñoom ñu koy film. Catastrophe. Whoa.
My thoughts indeed. Whoa. Man, like,
as you can see, the ship is sinking in Senegal. It's going down.
Whoa. Man, like,
Taat bi jël na, c'est fini. Gaal bi laal na ndox ba pare. C'est fini. Gaal bi day dem, tankeer bi day dem. Non, gaal gi day.
Also, is the vessel, is it like beached or something, or is it close to shore, or is it simply in the process of sinking?
Yeah, from what we understand, it's well off the coast. You can see the lights of some city off in the distance, but this is at least 20 miles offshore. This is technically within international waters, and the vessel is sinking out here. You can actually see right here, this is probably the best clip we have, that there is about a 5 or 10 degree list to stern on this ship from the water that is taken on currently. So it is taking on a mass amount of water. Right now, the entirety of the engine and machinery spaces, which actually run the ship and keep it going at sea, are most likely submerged inside of the ship in a pretty deep layer of salt water at the moment, meaning that also that engine bay is pretty much entirely out of operation, as salt water corrodes machinery spaces quite quickly. This means that this ship is largely going under at the moment. Now, I do want to make it quite clear that this ship is alleged to be a shadow tanker by several countries that had put shadow tankers on a list. And according to those lists, allegedly, the Mersin is one of those vessels. Now, what is quite interesting about this is that the Russians claim that the shadow fleet is non-existent, and that the Russian government and the Russian people and no Russian businesses have any connection whatsoever to any of these vessels. But, interestingly enough, the Russians did make a comment on this today and stated that the Ukrainians had attacked the ship, and that is the reason why it was sinking. Apparently, from what they claim, it was attacked with some form of an explosive, which punctured the hull without a fire starting, and then the ship started to take on water and sink, like we're seeing in this clip right here. So it appears that at the moment, according to the Russian claim, which we're to take it at face value, this is the longest range attack by a drone that has ever been conducted in history, and not only that, it is being conducted against an alleged shadow tanker. 1 day after, well actually 2 days after, The Kairos and the Virat were attacked in the Black Sea by the Ukrainian Navy there. So it is quite interesting. And I've got to say that it is fairly interesting sort of an incident to see, especially considering that the armed forces of Ukraine did just come off of the heels of a successful attack against 2 alleged shadow tankers within the area of the Black Sea just off of the coast of Turkey, near to the Strait, actually the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles. We also saw an additional clip, by the way, just to show you all this, of a sailor on board the Kairos actually filming their experience on board, along with the evacuation to the main deck, along with the fire that was existing near to the superstructure when the ship had just been hit by the Ukrainian drones. At least the first Ukrainian drones, not the naval drones that we saw later. These were apparently the aerial-based drones that hit the ship, and this footage comes right after that first hit.
1, 2, 3.
You see the fire here.
Oh, wow.
Crew members standing on deck.
Oh, that is crazy. Also, can you turn it down a little bit? That is blaringly loud. Like, it's almost blowing my speakers out. But that is crazy. You can actually just see the trail of fire going on back there. You're right. It must have actually busted the fuel tank or something at the back of the vessel, if that's where it's located, because it looks like it's just leaking it all out. And according to what we had heard, this vessel was on its way to pick up Russian oil, at least allegedly. So it wasn't carrying anything. So it must have been the vessel's own fuel.
Yeah, it seems like the aerial drones that hit it first, considering that they were still floating afterwards and none of the punctures were on the waterline from the explosions, apparently hit a fuel tank in the stern of the ship that was filled most likely with bunker sea oil, which is usually the most common form of fuel on these larger vessels. And the bunker sea oil ignited from the initial explosion and then spilled out onto the sea below, and then just started to spread out and create this literal film of fire that exists behind the ship as it started to slow down in speed, considering that the ship's propulsion was turned off because they were preparing to possibly abandon ship. We still saw that while the ship was slowing down, it was literally leaving a trail of fire behind it from the bunker sea oil that was pouring out of the open puncture on the side of the hull. This guy's like, hey, yo, we out here in the Black Sea. Our ship got hit. And he's like, this ain't good, fam. Chat, we're cooking, literally.
I appreciate the vlog, though. I mean, this is helpful to see.
It really is. You know what's crazy?
You know, they were shocked because they probably weren't expecting to get hit like this far away from Ukraine like this. They were probably not expecting, though. So you can tell by the guy's face there. He looks like he's in shock a little bit that this is actually happening.
Yeah, and we can see that they've all abandoned the superstructure or the sail of the vessel at the stern, and they've now all migrated to the bow of the ship in a large group. The entire crew is here, so nobody is left in the ship inside of it. The entire crew is up here with everyone else at the bow of the ship now, watching the stern burn uncontrollably. Crew's just watching the blaze from the distance.
No smoking. Safety first.
Safety first. I've been saying that for 20 years. And if I say
Raise the power. Do it.
Man, they were on the ship
look,
practically all night.
Yeah, really? I thought they got evacuated pretty quick based on the reports, but apparently they were hanging out for a long, long time.
According to the Turkish Maritime Authority, they were evacuated off the ship fairly quickly. This actually shows they were there for pretty much at least several hours, because when the clips first started, it appeared to be well in the middle of the day here. And then here it is clearly dusk nearly and turning into night. Well, it appears that we did get some additional clips from the Kairos, at least, showing the aftermath of the Ukrainian strike on the ship, at least the first strikes that were conducted, and it is giving us a general idea at the moment, along with the ship sinking off the coast of Senegal today, that it is highly likely at the moment that the Ukrainians are starting a global war against Russian shadow tankers. I do want to make this a little bit clear, though, at the moment, that some people are actually saying that the Mersin off the coast of Senegal actually was not involved in the Ukrainian attack. Others are saying that the ship simply is dilapidated and that it's sinking for that reason. crazily enough, that's actually a very viable theory. We have seen several Russian ships in the past, especially those in the Black Sea, literally rip asunder without any external developments happening, just because they're poorly maintained, and then spill out their contents into the Black Sea. Some of y'all will actually remember, way back in the day, that around 4 of these smaller sea-going tankers actually ripped themselves apart all within a 4-day period around the area of the Kerch Strait in somewhat rougher seas. Generally, the rough seas were what ripped them apart, but the structural integrity had been so greatly weakened due to poor management and repairs of the vessel that the rougher sea state was all it was needed that was necessary to rip the ships apart. This one, however, is not that same class of ship. This is an ocean-going tanker. And while some people have claimed that the Russian Federation is running dilapidated ships, we've never seen an ocean-going tanker of this size ever start sinking. That's just never happened. The largest one we've ever seen that started to sink was about 450 feet long. This vessel is about 750 feet long. It is a totally different class by displacement and tonnage. This has never happened before. So the fact that the Russians are claiming that this was attacked by Ukrainian drones, it's not entirely out of the question, especially if the explosions were further down towards the waterline. It is possible that we may not be able to see the actual puncture or explosion marks because it is so far down in the water by the point that this picture and video was made of the sinking of the Mersin. So at the moment, it seems fairly likely that the Ukrainians may have actually conducted this attack and caused damage to the shadow tanker, especially considering that no matter the range or the distance, conducting attacks against an alleged shadow tanker within any area of the world's international waters has the very same sort of an outcome as far as diplomatic developments are concerned. It is a shadow tank, well, it's more so an oil tanker within international waters flagged by some country somewhere in the world, and the Ukrainians are blowing them up. So it doesn't really matter if that happens in the Black Sea, the North Atlantic, the Mediterranean, or anywhere else in the world for that matter. It largely is the same occurrence, no matter the distance and no matter the size of vessel. But a lot of people are talking about this at the moment, and whether or not the Ukrainians conducted the attack, and if they did, how in the world did they do it, considering the range that this was from Ukraine? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so that oil tanker that you saw sinking off the coast of Senegal, which is all the way down in Africa, which is crazy. It's 5,500 kilometers away from Ukraine, which is extremely long distance. Sources are saying that Ukraine attacked the tanker carrying Russian oil around Senegal. So what are your thoughts about that? 49% said Ukraine likely launched drones from nearby and struck it, while 23% said Ukraine has a very advanced long-range drones that can reach all the way down into Africa, which is kind of hard to believe, and 13% said Ukraine could not have done this under the circumstances. So I do want to emphasize that the Russians are claiming that the Ukrainians attacked it. It's coming directly from Russia, that claim right there. So we got to take that for what we will, because the Russians do lie quite a bit. I will say there is an ongoing, I guess you could call it a war against the Black Sea Fleet, the oil tankers that is, by Ukraine. We've seen 2 of them attacked over the last few days, but this one in Senegal, I'll be honest with you, I'm having a very hard time believing that this was an attack by Ukraine, because Ukraine simply does not have drones that can go 5,500 kilometers away. They don't have that. Unless they have something like a Wunderwaffe weapon or something that they've been keeping secret, then they have no aerial drones that can go that far. So the only way they could launch this attack was if they launched it locally from Senegal, like let's say from the coast. They could have done it that way, or they might have had maybe agents that maybe swam over to the vessel and placed charges on it or something like that. That's also another possibility as well. But I'll say this. I honestly am very skeptical about this. I'm beginning to wonder if it's maybe just bad maintenance or something that led to it, or some type of unintentional accident. So I'm kind of with the 14%. I don't think Ukraine could have done it, and I don't think Ukraine sent agents to Senegal to go take out the Russian oil tanker. So that's my hunch right now, but we're waiting to hear more information. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I would have to be with a 48%. I actually would have to say that the Ukrainians launched it from nearby, as we have seen in prior instances that Ukrainian special forces have been involved in conflicts against the Russian Federation in Sudan, Mali, and Mauritania. Mauritania being incredibly close, at least in terms of the distance, to the Mersin, which is going down by the stern as of today. So I would say that it is quite likely, just due to the proximity of Ukrainian special forces in the area, that they may have been able to try and manage or conduct some form of an attack against the vessel, considering that it was not that far away. If we were to say that the attack was not launched from Senegal, but from the more northerly country of Mauritania, we actually would see that that attack at the closest could have been conducted from about 200 miles away, which is well within reason for really any Ukrainian Special Forces unit that was able to either get, one, a Magura to Mauritania in some form, or even Liudi long-range drones, which would be a lot easier to get into a place like more so Saharan Africa, considering there are practically no customs or inspections within these areas, and we've always seen that that is the case, as Ukrainian Special Forces, armed and fully equipped, have been fighting Russian Special Forces, especially the Wagner several years ago, within Mali and Mauritania, sometimes with decisive results coming out as a factor in that equation. So with that in mind, I would have to say it's not out of the possibility. It's not like Ukraine is sending people out of their way into this area. We already generally know, at least on the very lowest levels of information that we have, that there are some Ukrainian Special Forces that have been present in this area in the past and have been heavily equipped for ground operations. So they may have been equipped now, or may have been given equipment to forces that were already within the area to try and conduct an attack on this Russian shadow tanker, or alleged shadow tanker.
Just imagine the implications of this. If it's proven that Ukraine actually did carry this out, and they either send agents to do this in Senegal, or they launched drones nearby in Senegal to hit this vessel, then that means Ukraine has the ability, at least partially, to basically attack Russian vessels globally, pretty much wherever the Ukrainian agents are at, which is kind of crazy. And once again, I'm not sure how Russia's going to defend against that, because Russia can plausibly defend their vessels in the Black Sea, because they do have a reach to the Black Sea, but they can't defend their vessels all the way around the continent of Africa. That's going to be extremely hard for Russia to defend against. So that would be a major implication, something that Russia really couldn't respond to if that was the case.
You know, it's actually something of a significant risk when you think about it, because with the Ukrainian Special Forces having been known to be present in Sudan, Mali, and Mauritania, which are the three countries that we know of definitively that Ukrainian Special Operations Forces have been in, they are at the crossroads for every single Russian shadow tanker that's trying to get to India or China. The only way that Russian shadow tankers can try to get past this area is during the summer months and try and make it from, say, Ust-Luga through the Baltic, North Sea, Norwegian Sea, and then through Barents, Kara, Laptev, and East Siberian seas, and then circle all the way around to the Pacific, which is generally a logistically inefficient supply line, and one that they probably wouldn't prefer. So if the Russians go with their normal sort of a supply route, which is to load their ships up with oil and then ship them out into the Atlantic, and then around Africa, and then on towards China, or through the Mediterranean and then through the Suez Canal, they are going to be passing by a country that has Ukrainian Special Operations Forces operational within them. That also means that if the Ukrainian Special Forces did manage to conduct this attack today and did pull it off successfully, every single Russian ship passing by these areas, especially near to the Suez, are going to be within incredibly short distance of a possible Ukrainian attack hitting the ship and knocking it out completely, which is going to completely change the Russians' abilities to ship oil at sea, and it's either going to make it a lot more expensive, as they're going to have to take even longer journeys in terms of mileage and time to be able to avoid these areas, or they're going to start seeing that they're losing a lot of ships in the meantime if this actually was the case today. I also want to put this out there, folks, that the reason why we are putting a lot of credence into the idea that the Russians may be correct and that a Ukrainian attack did happen on these ships is that the other day when the Kairos and the Virat was attacked inside of the Black Sea, a lot of people were saying that the Ukrainians couldn't have conducted that because they didn't have the range. It was clearly sea mines that someone had laid that had apparently been severed from their chains and were floating loose through the seas, and then it turned out that the Ukrainians did admit that they conducted the attacks, much to the surprise of several people out there in the world. And a decent amount of the OSINT people also were surprised by that development as well, as they were also trying to discredit it and say that it wasn't a Ukrainian attack, it was most likely some sort of an act of God or a random event. That's why we're saying that there's a high likelihood that this ship, also within very close proximity to the Ukrainians, starting attacks on shadow tankers, which has never been done before, mind you all, by the Ukrainians in the history of the whole war. This has a decent amount of credence that it may be another form of an attack by the Ukrainians, this time in a place where Russia would never imagine that they were capable of an attack of that form. But
yeah. Also, by the way, like you know how we like sort of coined the term turret toss, and everybody started using it after we started saying turret toss on the channel and stuff like that. I think we should start calling these attacks that Ukraine's conducting on these oil tankers. Start calling them rubber ducky attacks. That would be pretty. That would be pretty catchy, right there. You'd remember that. So if we say, like, for example, another oil tanker in the Black Sea got hit, we could say it was hit with a rubber ducky attack from Ukraine. That'd be quite a cute thing.
Man, a rubber ducky attack. That would be quite an interesting one. We'll have to consider that. But why would we call it a rubber ducky though?
It sounds like it sounds all cheeky and stuff like that. Ukraine likes their cheeky jokes, by the way.
But possibly, perhaps. Oh, heavens. But with that, it is time for us to move on from the shadow tanker story and on to another part of the shadow tanker story that's more so on land at the port of Novorossiysk. Novorossiysk port has actually had a little bit of additional footage come out, which I wanted to show y'all here right now in this news segment, of the attack that was conducted at their port on the 14th of November, which has largely knocked out the entirety of the port. Just to show y'all this today on Marine Tracker, which is basically Flight Radar 24 for ships, there was not a single oil tanker within the port of Novorossiysk, or hardly any ships for that matter, as most of the port facilities have been completely destroyed and made inoperable. So for that reason, the port of Novorossiysk, as of right now, is still out of action due to the Ukrainian attacks that have been conducted on the port. This was the largest oil loading port within the Black Sea, and the only other one is the port of Tuapse, which has also been knocked out as well, meaning that oil shipping traffic within this area is exceptionally low. Additionally, we also got some new archival footage from the 14th of November showing the famous attack that happened that knocked the port out. This footage was filmed from an oil tanker that was at Novorossiysk port. So, without further ado, folks, here's this little bit of footage. We can hear the sound of drones, air defense fire, the drone flying on over, tracers ripping right overhead of the sailor, the star shells flying, once again reminding us of that night on the 14th of November. We can see the front of the oil tanker.
Oh, there goes the crazy fire right there. Oh, there's the blue light out in the distance, too.
Oh, and an explosion of a drone out there in the middle of the harbor. We're going to turn it up a little bit more so you can hear it a little bit better. The crew members are in absolute shock watching this display happen right overhead. The Ukrainians flying in their drones. At this point in the clip, the entirety of the Russian air defense battery at the mouth of the bay had already been destroyed at this point, from what we understand, and the rest of these oil tankers are sitting here pretty much defenseless and helplessly, watching the Russians fire machine guns blindly into the sky, hoping to hit something and never hitting anything.
Notice the cameraman is staying ducked away.
Oh yeah, the cameraman always survives. Dang! And the air defense fire is being laid on thick. The cameraman's getting a little lower. The rounds are literally whizzing right over this guy's head. They're cracking right overhead of these guys. We see the light of the star shells continue to illuminate the whole area. The Russians do not have night vision.
What is this light coming into view right here?
Those are the star shells. Those were the incendiary shells that the Russians fire off into the air that have a parachute attached to them, and they burn overhead, so it's basically like an artificial sun.
Interesting.
Y'all hear that? Oh, there we go again. There's all the air defense fire again. Oh, and there's the hit right on the plumbing of the oil loading facility.
This guy was smoking a cigarette. He had to take the edge off when this was happening.
Bro, we do have to point out that this man decided that in the midst of this all, it was the right time for a smoke break. And I'll be honest with y'all, folks, I heavily discourage smoking. But in this instance, I think that he might actually deserve a smoke break for a minute in the middle of all this stuff going on around him. So to actually show you what we're looking at right there, just put all this into picture, the sequence of events that happened that night, these guys are on a ship somewhere about right here. at this oil loading platform. Actually, it may have actually been this ship. It's a very similar sort of a deck layout to theirs. And they're sitting here on the superstructure up here. So when they look out into the harbor in the film, you'll see the bow of the vessel below them if they ever get a good look over the railing. But then behind them, what they were filming right there was this large area of pipework here that is actually a part of the pumping facility that pumps the crude oil onto these ships that are at the port, so that way they can load up with oil and get back to sea to go sell it. That's what they're seeing that just got hit, right there at that exact spot of the port. So, getting back into the clip. Oh, and here it goes again. Oh, and here goes the drone right overhead. Oh, and another hit. A second direct hit onto the oil loading facility. The ship's alarms are now going off from the force of the explosion.
Honestly, though, if I was on this ship right here, I would be scared that the drone was coming for me or something at that point.
I mean, honestly, I would have been terrified, really. The air defense fire is still going off, even after the actual oil loading port has pretty much been completely destroyed at this point.
Look, Captain, look! I'm the captain now.
And that's the end of that little clip, but another glimpse back into that fateful night on the 14th of November when the largest oil loading port in the Black Sea was knocked out by Ukrainian fire. And that was probably the closest first-person point of view that we could have ever gotten to the direct hits on the oil loading facility. Additionally, tonight, in honor of that, the Russians did launch another attack against the state of Ukraine. Now, this is something that's actually kind of funny. So right here, folks, is the oil loading port right here. You see that right there? All the plumbing, the pipes, the giant tanks, so on and so forth. Y'all see that, right? You see that, Matthew? You do?
Yeah.
So right next door to that, you just walk right over to the next door and open it. That is the Vostochny Rayon, which is where the remainder of the surviving portions of the Black Sea Fleet are based out of currently. So tonight, in the middle of the attack on Ukraine, the Black Sea Fleet did something that they haven't done before yet that I've ever seen documented on film. Whenever the Black Sea Fleet is a part of the an attack on Ukraine, they usually send their submarines and ships out to sea from this little port, out of this opening right here, and then into the Black Sea, usually just off of the coast, somewhere around right here, and then they start firing off their missiles at the state of Ukraine, giving their little token part of the attack that the Russians will conduct against Ukraine. So tonight they've decided, due to the risks of a possible Ukrainian attack, considering that they also don't have the air defense battery down here at the mouth of the bay to try and help to protect the fleet if it goes out to sea to try and conduct this attack, that they are going to give themselves the absolute maximum level of protection. And they conducted the missile attack on Ukraine tonight from inside of the port itself, moored at their piers. The ships just started firing off their missiles right from that spot, which is absolutely insane to watch. I'll show you all the clip that we got from Novorossiysk, showing the missiles literally being fired straight out of the Vostochny Rayon. No joke, this is absolutely insane. So here's the clip. There they go flying, bled. Look, there they fly. 8 missiles, bled.
Oddly enough, they did this during the last attack as well. They also did this last time, because I remember seeing very similar footage to this one. It looks almost identical, actually. And they were launching them straight from the